my son-in-law, looked me straight in the eye. In my living room, the living room where I raised my daughter, and he said, "Should give us this house. You're old. You don't need all this space." I'm 68 years old. I've lived in this house for 43 years. My husband and I bought it when we were newlyweds. My daughter took her first steps on this carpet. My husband took his last breath in the bedroom upstairs. And my son-in-law thought he could just have it. What happened next? Well, let me tell you a story about entitlement, family drama, and how I taught him the lesson of his life. This is going to be a long one, folks. Pour yourself some coffee. Get comfortable. Because this story has twists you won't see coming. But before we dive in, I need you to do something for me. And I promise, this matters for the story. If you think families should respect their elders, hit that like button right now. If you've ever dealt with an entitled in-law, drop a comment below saying, "I've been there. I read every single one, and your stories give me life." And if you want to hear more family drama that'll make your jaw drop, subscribe, because trust me, this is just the beginning. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare started. 6 months ago, a Tuesday afternoon I'll never forget. Let me paint you a picture of my life before everything went sideways. My name is Margaret. I'm 68 years old, and for the past 43 years, I've lived in a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood in Ohio. Nothing fancy, nothing extravagant, just home. My husband, Robert, and I bought this house in 1981. We were 25 years old, fresh-faced, and so in love it hurt. The house cost us $42,000 back then. Can you imagine? $42,000. Today, it's worth about $450,000 because the neighborhood got nice, real nice. Robert was a mechanical engineer. Worked for the same company for 38 years. Good man. The kind of man who fixed the neighbor's fence without being asked. The kind of man who never raised his voice, but when he spoke, you listened. We had one child, our daughter, Emily. Born in 1985. She was our whole world. Robert passed away 3 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden. One minute we were watching Jeopardy, and the next, he was gone. Those first few months after he died, I didn't think I'd make it. This house felt too big, too quiet, too full of memories. But Emily was my rock. She'd come over every Sunday with her husband David. We'd have dinner. We'd talk. She'd make sure I was okay. David seemed like a good man back then. Polite. Respectful. He worked in sales for some tech company, made decent money. He and Emily had been married for 5 years, living in a small 2-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes away. They didn't have kids yet. Emily said they were waiting until they were more settled. I should have paid more attention to that word. Settled. It started small, little comments here and there. About 4 months after Robert died, David started making observations about my house. We'd be sitting at dinner and he'd say things like, "Wow, Margaret, this dining room table seats 8 people. Do you ever actually use all these chairs?" Or, "This backyard is huge. Must be a lot of work to maintain for just one person." Or, my personal favorite, Margaret, houses this size are really meant for families, growing families. At first, I brushed it off. I thought he was just making conversation. Maybe he was hinting that they wanted to have kids soon. I didn't think much of it. Emily would sometimes give him a look, like a stop talking look, but she never said anything directly. Then came the day he asked to borrow money. It was a Sunday in early March. They came over for dinner like usual. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, Robert's favorite meal. I still make it sometimes, even though he's not here to eat it. After dinner, Emily went upstairs to the bathroom. And David seized his moment. He leaned back in his chair, real casual-like, and said, "Hey, Margaret, I wanted to ask you something." "Sure," I said. "What's on your mind?" "Well," he cleared his throat, Emily and I have been talking, and we're thinking about buying a house. Something with a yard. Maybe start a family. Oh, that's wonderful, I said, and I meant it. I was happy for them. Yeah, he continued. The thing is, the market is crazy right now. We need about 30,000 for a down payment, and we're a bit short. I knew where this was going. I was wondering, he said, not quite meeting my eye, if you'd be willing to lend us the money. We pay you back, of course, with interest. Now, let me be clear about something. I'm not rich. Robert left me comfortable. Between his life insurance, his pension, and our savings, I'm okay. I'm not going to run out of money anytime soon, but I'm not sitting on a fortune either. $30,000 is a lot of money. I looked at David and I said, "That's a big ask, David. Let me think about it." His face fell. Just a little. But I saw it. "Of course," he said quickly. "No pressure. Just thought I'd ask." When Emily came back downstairs, the subject didn't come up again, but I could feel it. Something had shifted. Over the next few weeks, the comments got more frequent, more pointed. David would walk through my house like he was appraising it. He'd run his hand along the banister and say, "This wood is real oak. They don't make houses like this anymore." Or he'd stand in the kitchen and say, "This kitchen would be perfect for a big family. You could fit a whole Thanksgiving dinner in here." And then one day he crossed a line. It was a Saturday afternoon. Emily had asked if she could come over to go through some of Robert's old things. I'd been putting it off, but she said it might be good for me. Therapeutic. She brought David with her. We were up in the attic, sorting through boxes of Robert's old clothes, books, tools. Emily was getting emotional. I was barely holding it together. And David? David was on his phone, barely paying attention. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "Margaret, this house is way too big for one person. Have you ever thought about downsizing?" I stopped what I was doing. Emily looked up, her face going pale. "Excuse me?" I said. "I'm just saying," David continued, still looking at his phone. "You're not getting any younger. This house has stairs. What if you fall? What if something happens and you're all alone?" Emily jumped in immediately. "David, stop. I'm just being practical," he said, finally looking up. "Your mom is almost 70. This house is a lot to manage. Maybe she should think about moving into a smaller place, or," he paused, "or maybe even assisted living. Somewhere with people around, for her safety." Assisted living. I was 68 years old. Healthy, active. I walked 3 miles every morning. I did yoga twice a week. I volunteered at the library. And this man who'd been in my family for 5 years, was suggesting I should be put in a home. Emily looked horrified. "David, we are not having this conversation right now." "Mom, I'm so sorry. It's fine," I said quietly. Too quietly. It wasn't fine. But I didn't have the energy to fight right then. We finished going through the boxes in silence. They left an hour later. That night, Emily called me. "Mom, I am so sorry. I don't know what's gotten into him. He's been stressed about money lately, and I think it's making him act weird." "It's okay, sweetheart," I lied. But it wasn't okay, because I could see exactly what was happening. David didn't want me to downsize for MY benefit. He wanted me out of this house so H could have it, but I didn't know how bad it was going to get. Not yet. 2 weeks later, Emily called and asked if she and David could come over for dinner. She sounded nervous, said they needed to talk to me about something important. My stomach dropped. I knew. I just knew something bad was coming. But I said yes, because she's my daughter, and I love her. They arrived at 6 o'clock on a Friday evening. Emily was carrying flowers, my favorite, white roses. That's how I knew it was serious. She only brings flowers when she's about to deliver bad news. David was wearing a button-up shirt. He'd shaved. He looked prepared, like he was going into a business meeting. We sat down for dinner. I'd made lasagna, Emily's favorite. The first 20 minutes were painful. Small talk. Weather. Emily's job, David's job, all surface level nonsense. Finally, Emily put down her fork and looked at me. Mom, she said softly, we need to talk to you about something. I figured, I said. She glanced at David. He nodded, like he was giving her permission. Permission? In my house. Emily took a deep breath. Mom, David and I have been doing a lot of thinking about our future, about starting a family, about where we want to raise kids. Okay, I said carefully. And, well, she looked at David again. He jumped in. Margaret, we think this house would be perfect for us. There it was, out in the open. Perfect for you, I repeated slowly. Yes, David said, leaning forward like an eager salesman. Think about it. 3 bedrooms, a big backyard, great school district. It's everything we need. I see, I said. And where exactly do you see me in this scenario? Emily spoke up quickly. Mom, we've been looking at senior living communities. There's a really nice one about 15 minutes from here. It's got activities, a cafeteria, a nurse on staff. You want me to move into a nursing home so you can have my house. It's not a nursing home, David said defensively. It's a community for active seniors. I am an active senior, I snapped. And I am archetype in my home. Emily's eyes were filling with tears. Mom, please don't be upset. We're just trying to think about what's best for everyone. You'd be safer, you'd have people around, and we'd finally have space to start a family. Best for everyone? I repeated. Or best for you? David sighed, like I was being difficult. Margaret, let's be realistic. You're not going to live in this house forever. Eventually, you'll need help. Why not make the transition now while you're still healthy? And this way, the house stays in the family. The house is in the family, I said coldly. My family. I bought this house with my husband. We raised our daughter here. This is my home. And Robert? Robert died in this house. Upstairs. In our bedroom. I held his hand while he took his last breath. You want me to leave that behind? For what? So you can have a backyard? Emily was crying now. Mom, we're not trying to kick you out. We just thought maybe it would be better for everyone. Better for you, I corrected. Not for me. David stood up, his face reddening. You know what, Margaret? We were trying to do this the nice way, but the truth is, you're being selfish. Excuse me? You're sitting in this big house all alone while your daughter and her husband are crammed into a tiny apartment. We can't afford to buy a house in this market. We've been trying for years. And you could help us. But you won't because you're too stubborn. I stood up too. Get out, Mom. Emily started. No. Emily, I love you. But I will not be spoken to like this in my own home. David, you will leave. Now. David threw his napkin on the table. Fine, but you're making a mistake, Margaret. This house is too much for you. And one day, you're going to realize we were right. They left. The door slammed, and I sat down at my dining room table. The table Robert and I bought 40 years ago, and I cried. Emily didn't call for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of silence. No Sunday dinners, no random check-in calls, nothing. I tried calling her 3 times. Each time it went to voicemail. I texted, "Sweetheart, I love you. Please call me. We need to talk." No response. Those were the longest 2 weeks of my life, longer than the weeks after Robert died. Because at least then, Emily was by my side. Now I was alone. Completely alone. I started wondering if I'd made a mistake. If I'd been too harsh. If maybe I should have at least considered their offer. But every time I thought about it, really thought about it, I got angry all over again. This was me house, me life, me decision. Why should I have to give that up? Finally, on day 15, Emily called. Mom? Her voice was small, broken. Emily. Oh, sweetheart, I've been so worried. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. She was crying. I didn't know he was going to say those things. I didn't know he was going to be so cruel. We talked about asking you, but I thought it would be a conversation. I didn't think he'd try to bully you. Emily, honey, you don't have to apologize for him. Yes, I do, she said firmly. He's my husband, and he was completely out of line. There was a pause. Mom, I need to tell you something. David has been different lately. Ever since he got passed over for that promotion at work, he's been obsessed with money, with status, with having the right house in the right neighborhood. And I think he saw your house as the easy solution. Emily, I said carefully, this isn't just about the house, is it? She was silent for a long moment. No, she finally whispered. It's not. Emily and I met for coffee the next day, without David. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't been sleeping. Mom, she said, I need to tell you everything, and you're not going to like it. I braced myself. David has been lying to me about a lot of things. 3 months ago, he told me he got a bonus at work, $5,000. He said we should save it for the house fund. I was so proud of him. Okay, I said slowly. There was no bonus, Mom. He borrowed the money from his brother, and he hasn't paid it back. My eyes widened. Then, last month, he told me his company was doing layoffs, and he was worried about his job. He said that's why we needed to move fast on getting a house, because if he lost his job, we'd never get approved for a mortgage. Let me guess, I said. There were no layoffs. Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I found out by accident. I ran into his coworker at the grocery store, and she mentioned how excited everyone was about the company expansion, about all the new positions opening up. So I confronted him, and he admitted it. He's been manipulating me, lying to me, creating urgency. Also, I pressure you into giving up the house. I felt my hands ball into fists. That son of a mom, there's more. He's been looking at real estate listings for your house. I found them on his computer. He's been calculating what it's worth, what he could sell it for. I stared at her. Sell it? He doesn't even own it. I know, Emily said. But he told me. He told me that once he moved into senior living, we'd take over the house. And then, after a few years, once you were settled, we could convince you to sign it over to us. And if I didn't. What? Emily looked down at her coffee cup. He said we'd wait until you passed away, and then, as your only heir, I'd inherit it anyway. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. My own son-in-law was waiting for me to die so he could take my house. Emily, what are you going to do? She looked up at me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Determination. I'm leaving him, Mom. Emily moved back in with me that weekend. She didn't tell David she was leaving. She waited until he went to work, packed 3 suitcases, and left. She left a note on the kitchen table. I know what you've been doing. I know about the lies. We're done. My lawyer will be in touch. David called her 47 times that day. 47. She didn't answer once. He called me too. I answered on the 3rd try. Margaret, what the hell did you say to her? I didn't say anything, David. Emily's a smart woman. She figured it out on her own. Figured what out? That you've been poisoning her against me? No, David. She figured out that you're a liar, a manipulator, and a man who was counting down the days until I died so you could sell my house. Silence on the other end. Then, you can't prove that. I don't have to prove it. Emily already knows, and that's all that matters. He hung up. Over the next 2 weeks, David tried everything. He sent flowers. He sent apology texts. He showed up at the house until I threatened to call the police. He even got his mother involved. She called me crying, begging me to talk some sense into Emily. I politely told her that her son needed to talk some sense into himself. Emily filed for divorce 4 weeks later. And that's when things got really ugly. David didn't take the divorce well. At first, he tried the nice guy approach, apologizing, promising to change, begging Emily to come back. When that didn't work, he got mean. He hired a lawyer, a real shark, the kind of guy who wears expensive suits and smiles like a crocodile, and they came after everything. Now, here's the thing about divorce law. In most states, what you bring into a marriage stays yours. What you accumulate during the marriage gets split. Emily and David had been married for 5 years. They didn't own property together. They had a joint checking account with about $12,000 in it. They had a car paid off in David's name, and they had debt, credit card debt, about $18,000. Should have been simple, right? Wrong. David's lawyer argued that Emily had been supported by family wealth during the marriage, that I had given her money, that she'd had an unfair advantage, which was ridiculous. I'd helped Emily out a few times, paid for a car repair once, helped with a medical bill, the kind of thing parents do. But David's lawyer tried to argue that those gifts should be factored into the divorce settlement, that Emily owed David. It was absurd, but it dragged things out, months of lawyers, depositions, paperwork. And then David did something I didn't see coming. He claimed he had a right to my house. Let me explain what happened, because even now, I can barely believe it. David's lawyer filed a motion arguing that because David and Emily had been promised the house by me, and because they had made life decisions based on that promise, David was entitled to compensation. Compensation. For a house I never promised him, that I still lived in. The argument went like this. David claimed that during family discussions I had implied that Emily would inherit the house, that I had encouraged them to delay buying their own home because they'd eventually get mine. He said that they had turned down other housing opportunities, job offers in other cities, a chance to buy a fixer-upper because they were waiting for my house. And therefore, because they'd relied on this promise, I owed them damages. My lawyer, a wonderful woman named Patricia, laughed when she read the filing. "This is the most ridiculous thing I've seen in 20 years of practice," she said. "But we still have to respond to it." So we did. We provided evidence, records showing I'd never put the house in Emily's name, testimony from Emily stating I'd never promised them the house, emails and texts showing David's harassment, evidence of his lies. The judge threw out the claim in about 15 minutes. But David wasn't done. When the legal route failed, David went to the court of public opinion. He started telling people, friends, family, neighbors, that I was a bitter old woman who was tearing his marriage apart, that I was manipulating Emily, turning her against him, that I was hoarding a house I didn't need while they struggled. Some people believed him. I started getting calls, emails, messages on Facebook. People I'd known for years were asking me, "Is it true you won't help Emily and David? Is it true you're making them live in a tiny apartment while you rattle around in that big house?" One of my oldest friends, someone I'd known since Emily was a baby, called and said, "Margaret, I love you, but don't you think you're being a little selfish? Emily's your daughter. Don't you want her to be happy?" I tried to explain. I tried to tell her what David had done, what he'd said, but she cut me off. Well, I'm sure there are two sides to every story. Two sides. As if there was a side where it was okay for a man to try to manipulate his wife and mother-in-law out of a house. I stopped going to church. I stopped going to book club. I stopped answering the phone. Emily was devastated. She tried to defend me, tried to set the record straight. But David was louder, more persistent. And then he made his biggest mistake. It was a Tuesday morning, 3 months into the divorce proceedings. I was in my kitchen making coffee when I heard a noise outside. I looked out the window. David's truck was in my driveway. I hadn't seen him in weeks. Emily had a restraining order that kept him away from her, but technically, he could still come to my house. I watched as he got out of the truck. He wasn't alone. There was another man with him, older, wearing a suit. They walked up to my front door. I didn't open it. David knocked. Then he rang the doorbell. "Margaret, I know you're in there." I stood frozen in my kitchen. "Margaret, open the door. I just want to talk." The other man, the one in the suit, pulled out a folder. And then I realized what was happening. He was a process server. They were serving me with papers. I opened the door just wide enough to take the papers. David was smiling. Actually smiling. "See you in court, Margaret." I closed the door, locked it, and I opened the envelope. David was suing me for emotional distress. He claimed that my interference in his marriage had caused him suffering, anxiety, depression. He was suing me for $50,000. I called Patricia immediately. "Can he do this?" I asked. She sighed. "He can file whatever he wants. Doesn't mean he'll win. In fact, he won't. But it'll cost you time and money to fight it." That's when I decided. I was done playing defense. It was time to go on the attack. I hired a private investigator. Her name was Linda, 50-something, former police detective. She looked like somebody's sweet aunt, but she had the instincts of a bloodhound. "What do you want to know?" she asked. "Everything," I said. It took her 2 weeks. And what she found, what she found, what she found. David had been lying about a lot more than just his job. First, the money he'd borrowed from his brother, he never paid it back. In fact, he'd borrowed from 332 different family members over the past 2 years. Total amount, nearly $30,000. None of it repaid. Second, he had a gambling problem. Online poker. Sports betting. Linda found records of tens of thousands of dollars in losses over the past 18 months. Third, he'd been having an affair, for 6 months, with a woman named Jessica, a coworker. Linda had photos, text messages, hotel receipts, everything. I called Emily and asked her to come over. When I showed her the evidence, she went pale. "Mom, how did you—" "I hired someone," I said simply. I needed to know what we were dealing with. Emily stared at the photos. The messages. One text from David to Jessica read, "Once I get the house situation figured out, we can finally be together. I promise." Emily looked up at me, her eyes blazing. He was planning to leave me anyway. "Yes," I said softly. He was. He was just using me to get to you, to get the house. "Yes." She stood up. "Give everything to my lawyer." "All of it." I did. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning in late September. David showed up in his best suit, confident as ever. His lawyer was still smiling that crocodile smile. Emily sat next to Patricia, calm and composed. I sat in the back row, watching. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, reviewed the case files. David's lawyer went first. He painted David as the victim, a devoted husband, a man who'd tried everything to make his marriage work, a man whose mother-in-law had interfered and manipulated his wife. He claimed David was entitled to half of the couple's assets, plus compensation for emotional distress. Then it was Patricia's turn. She stood up, and she smiled. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit new evidence." She handed the judge a folder. David's face went pale. Inside that folder was everything Linda had found. Bank records showing the gambling losses, loan documents showing the unpaid debts, and photos, text messages, proof of the affair. The judge read through it slowly. Then she looked up at David. "Mr. Harrison, is this information accurate?" David stammered. "Your Honor, I can't explain." "Is it accurate?" "Yes." The judge closed the folder. "Here's my ruling. The marriage is dissolved. Mrs. Emily Harrison will retain full ownership of the joint checking account. Mr. David Harrison will assume responsibility for all marital debt." David's lawyer shot to his feet. "Your Honor, that's not." The judge held up a hand. "I'm not finished." Furthermore, Mr. Harrison's claim for emotional distress against Margaret Chen is dismissed with prejudice. And if Mr. Harrison attempts to contact Mrs. Harrison or Mrs. Chen again outside of official legal channels, I will hold him in contempt. This court is adjourned. David sat frozen in his chair. Emily turned and looked at me. And she smiled. We'd won. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Emily got everything. David got nothing. Well, not nothing. He got his car, and his debt, and his ruined reputation. Word got around fast in our town. People found out about the affair, the gambling, the lies. Suddenly, the people who'd called me selfish went very quiet. Some of them apologized. I accepted the apologies. But I didn't forget. Emily stayed with me for another 3 months while she got back on her feet. We had dinner together every night. We watched old movies. We laughed. It felt like when she was a kid again. Before David. Before all the drama. One night, we were sitting on the back porch watching the sunset. Mom, she said quietly, I'm sorry for everything, for bringing him into our lives, for not seeing what he was. Emily, I said, you have nothing to apologize for. You loved him. You trusted him. That's not a flaw. That's who you are. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. 2 months later, Emily moved into her own apartment. A nice one-bedroom place about 10 minutes away. She didn't need a big house. She didn't need a yard. She needed a fresh start. And she got one. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a letter in the mail. It was from David. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was short, handwritten. It said, Margaret, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect Emily to forgive me either. I know what I did was wrong. I was desperate, stupid, selfish. I convinced myself that I deserved that house, that I was entitled to it because I had married into the family. I was wrong. I lost everything. My wife, my reputation, my family. And I have no one to blame but myself. I'm writing this to say I'm sorry. Not because I think it'll change anything, but because you deserve to hear it. I'm sorry. David, I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it up, and I put it in a drawer. Maybe one day I'll forgive him, but not today. So what's the moral of this story? Is it don't trust your son-in-law? Maybe. Is it protect what's yours? Partially. But I think the real lesson is this. You don't owe anyone your life, your home, your peace, not your children, not your in-laws, not anyone. This house, it's more than just walls and a roof. It's where I built a life with the man I loved. It's where I raised my daughter. It's where I've cried, laughed, and healed. And no one has the right to take that from me. David wanted this house because he thought it would make him successful, important. But a house doesn't do that. Character does. And David? He had none. I'm 68 years old. I still live in my house. I still walk 3 miles every morning. I still have Sunday dinners with my daughter. And I'm still here. Still standing. Still fighting. And if anyone else tries to take what's mine, well, they'll learn the same lesson David did. Don't mess with Margaret. If you made it this far, thank you. Truly, I know that was a long story, but some stories can't be told in 10 minutes. If you think I did the right thing, leave a comment below saying, don't mess with Margaret. I want to see how many of you made it to the end. If you've ever dealt with an entitled family member, share your story in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories help me feel less alone. And if you want more stories like this family drama, life lessons, and people getting what they deserve, subscribe to this channel. Hit that bell, because I've got plenty more to share. Life is short. Protect your peace. Stand your ground. And never, ever let anyone make you feel guilty for refusing to give up what's yours. I'm Margaret, and this is my house. Thanks for listening.